Did Keir Starmer just lose control of the very nation he hopes to rule? Because just 5 minutes ago, something unbelievable happened. Nigel Farage stepped in and blocked the mass arrests of anti-Labour protesters, sending Starmer into a total meltdown. The chaos unfolding across Britain right now isn't just political, it's personal. And it's revealing a truth the Labour elite hoped you'd never see. The people are rising, and the establishment is panicking. It all began with fury boiling over in towns and villages across the UK. Labour's radical tax proposals and net zero crackdowns have pushed the public to the edge, and now that anger has spilled into the streets. From farmers to small business owners, thousands are mobilising in what's quickly becoming one of the largest anti-government protests in recent memory. The people are fed up, they're tired of being ignored, and they're making their voices heard. But instead of listening, Keir Starmer chose to attack. Within hours of the protests breaking out, Starmer's inner circle sprang into action, not to negotiate, not to de-escalate, but to crush. Leaked documents from government insiders revealed chilling plans. A nationwide police operation greenlit from the top to arrest hundreds of peaceful demonstrators. The order was clear: label them extremists, shut them down, make an example. Starmer's government was ready to drag citizens off the streets, not for rioting, not for violence, but for daring to challenge Labour's grip on power. That's when the tables turned. Enter Nigel Farage, fierce, unfiltered, and absolutely furious. Upon learning of the planned arrests, Farage wasted no time. He stormed Parliament, confronted senior ministers, and demanded immediate answers. His Reform UK colleagues backed him to the hilt, launching an emergency motion to halt what they described as a political purge disguised as public order. They called it what it was: Labour's war on dissent. And in a matter of hours, Farage's intervention threw Starmer's plan into disarray. Police chiefs began backpedalling, legal advisors started raising red flags, and behind the scenes, chaos erupted in Labour HQ. Starmer was reportedly livid, screaming at aides, accusing Reform MPs of sabotage, and ordering a full-blown crackdown on anyone leaking to the press. According to one source, Starmer's rage was unhinged. He couldn't believe Farage had outmaneuvered him so publicly, so swiftly. Meanwhile, outside the halls of power, the protests only grew stronger. Across rural England, convoys of tractors blocked traffic. Families rallied in fields, and local leaders gave fiery speeches condemning Labour's tax tyranny and eco-authoritarianism. The slogan spreading through protest camps was simple but deadly: "We will not be silenced," and that message hit home. Support for the movement surged overnight. Social media exploded, with videos of peaceful protesters waving banners that read, "Save our farms, scrap the tax, and a hands off our land." But make no mistake, this uprising isn't just about farms or fuel, it's about freedom. What terrifies Starmer isn't the protest itself, it's the power behind it. These aren't isolated complaints. This is a movement, a revolt against a political class that no longer serves the people. And Farage? He's become the lightning rod for that revolt. His message is clear: Labour's authoritarian machine must be stopped before it grinds every last liberty into the dirt. And it's working. Senior Labour figures are beginning to crack. Whispers of rebellion are leaking from within. One Labour MP, speaking anonymously, warned that the crackdown on protesters could destroy the party's image for a generation. Another admitted that the inheritance tax plan was a rushed disaster. Even Starmer's usual media allies are starting to distance themselves, cautiously questioning the morality of using police force against peaceful citizens. In one dramatic moment, a top judge, or yes, a sitting judge, privately contacted Farage's team, offering legal support against the arrests. According to insiders, this judge has warned that Labour's crackdown would violate the Human Rights Act and set a dangerous precedent that could unravel decades of civil liberty protections. The legal establishment, often silent, is now rumbling with quiet defiance. The public is watching all of this unfold with growing disbelief. What began as a tax revolt has morphed into a full-on showdown between the people and the political elite. And Starmer? He's losing control fast. The next 24 hours could decide everything. Will Labour double down, risking national unrest? Or will Farage's intervention mark the beginning of the end for Starmer's authoritarian dreams? The fallout from Nigel Farage's last-minute intervention has sent shockwaves through Westminster, exposing fractures within the Labour government that many believed were unbreakable. Starmer's desperation to silence the swelling protests has been... The mass arrests that Starmer ordered were never about public safety. They were a thinly veiled attempt to intimidate and suppress dissent. a tactic straight out of the authoritarian playbook. The government's strategy was to label farmers and rural protesters as extremists and domestic threats, painting them as dangerous radicals to justify heavy-handed policing. But this plan crumbled the moment Farage stepped in and forced the issue into the national spotlight. The former Brexit leader's refusal to allow peaceful demonstrators to be branded criminals has inspired a new wave of resistance, rallying citizens from all walks of life who see the crackdown as an attack on their rights and freedoms. Behind the scenes, Labour's internal chaos is mounting. Starmer's closest advisors are divided, with some warning that the crackdown will alienate key voter groups and others urging the leader to double down on his hardline stance. The fractures in Labour's base have become impossible to ignore. The party's eco-warrior faction insists that aggressive environmental policies are non-negotiable, even if it means risking political fallout. But moderates, alarmed by the backlash, are calling for a retreat and a rethinking of the inheritance tax plan. This internal conflict has left Starmer isolated, struggling to maintain control over his party as the pressure builds from every direction. The broader public response to the protests and the attempted crackdown has been explosive. Across the nation, solidarity with the farmers and rural communities has surged. Town halls, local councils, and civic groups are openly condemning the government's actions. The narrative that Labour is attacking the heart of Britain's working class has taken hold in public discourse. Social media is awash with images of tractors blocking major roads, crowds gathering peacefully in protest, and impassioned speeches denouncing what many call a land grab. Hashtags like #SaveOurFarms and #StopStarmer have trended nationwide, signalling widespread discontent and the rapid growth of the movement. In Parliament, Reform UK and other opposition parties are capitalising on Labour's misstep. They have launched a relentless campaign to expose what they call Starmer's authoritarian agenda. Farage, in particular, has become the face of resistance, using his platform to amplify the voices of those affected by the inheritance tax and environmental policies. His speeches are fiery and direct, accusing Labour of trying to destroy Britain's farming heritage and impose an eco-fascist dictatorship that threatens not just farmers, but every citizen's property rights and freedoms. This rhetoric resonates with a population increasingly distrustful of political elites, who seem out of touch with everyday realities. The legal battle over the protests is also heating up. The judge who privately warned Farage's team has become a symbol of judicial resistance against Labour's crackdown. Legal experts have begun publicly criticising the government's tactics, arguing that using the police to suppress peaceful protest violates fundamental rights protected under the Human Rights Act and common law traditions. If these legal challenges succeed, it could set a precedent that severely restricts the government's ability to use force against dissenters in the future. This legal uncertainty adds another layer of complexity to an already volatile political situation. Starmer's handling of the crisis has drawn scathing criticism from all sides. Even traditionally sympathetic media outlets are questioning his leadership and judgment. Commentators describe his reaction as panicked and disconnected, noting that his refusal to engage with protesters and his insistence on a heavy-handed police response only fueled tensions. The once promising Labour leader now faces accusations of being out of touch, authoritarian, and unwilling to listen to the people he serves. This perception is damaging not only to his image, but to the future of the Labour Party itself. Meanwhile, the protests continue to grow. Far from being intimidated by threats of arrest, the demonstrators are galvanised by the crackdown attempt. New protests are planned in cities across the UK, with calls for nationwide strikes and boycotts of businesses seen as supporting Labour's agenda. Farmers, unions, and community leaders are coordinating efforts, building a coalition that crosses traditional political lines. This broad-based resistance suggests that Labour's troubles are far from over, and that the party's policies risk igniting a sustained backlash that could reshape British politics for years to come. In the midst of this turmoil, Starmer finds himself trapped in an impossible position. On one hand, his political base demands firm action to advance Labour's environmental goals and tax policies. On the other, the public outcry against these measures is relentless and growing louder. Farage's intervention has empowered the opposition and emboldened the protesters, leaving Starmer squeezed from all sides. The question now is whether Starmer can find a way to regain control, or if this crisis marks the beginning of his political downfall. What's clear is that this moment will be remembered as a turning point. The clash between the ruling party and the people over land, liberty and power is more than a policy dispute. It's a battle for the soul of Britain. Starmer's attempt to silence dissent has only amplified it. and Nigel Farage's bold stand has transformed what might have been a quiet crackdown into a national revolt. The stakes couldn't be higher, and the outcome remains uncertain. But one thing is certain: the political landscape of Britain will never be the same again. As the dust settles on the chaos unleashed by the attempted crackdown, the true scale of the political earthquake shaking Starmer's government is becoming undeniable. This is not just a protest about inheritance tax or environmental regulations. It is a direct challenge to the entire Labour agenda and the authority of its leader. The anger is palpable, and the stakes could not be higher. Starmer's vision of a green, tax-heavy Britain is colliding head-first with the realities of everyday people who feel betrayed, unheard, and under siege by their own government. The farmers' revolt, bolstered by Nigel Farage's defiant stand, has morphed into a national crisis that threatens to unravel Labour's grip on power. Behind the scenes, the narrative of Starmer as a controlled, strategic politician is cracking. Insiders report a leader increasingly overwhelmed, frustrated, and isolated. The political machinery that once ran smoothly is now groaning under the strain of internal dissent and external pressure. Starmer's advisors are split between those urging pragmatism and retreat, and hardliners demanding no compromise on the party's core policies. This infighting is visible to the public through leaks and media speculation, feeding a growing perception of chaos at the top. Meanwhile, Starmer's once unshakable image as the calm alternative to the chaos of previous governments is being eroded by what critics call erratic and desperate moves. The broader political fallout is equally severe. The Conservative Party, still licking its wounds from previous defeats, is seizing the opportunity to attack Labour's handling of the crisis. They portray Starmer as a weak leader who has lost control of his party and the country. Opposition MPs are relentless in the Commons, demanding answers, questioning Starmer's competence, and warning of the economic and social damage caused by Labour's policies. Public trust in the government is slipping, and polls indicate that a growing number of voters are turning away from Labour in disgust. The narrative of a government at war with its own people is gaining traction, threatening to reshape the electoral landscape. Public support for the farmers and anti-Labour protesters has swelled beyond the rural heartlands. Urban centres, traditionally Labour strongholds, are showing signs of fatigue and dissent. Workers, small business owners, and ordinary citizens are rallying behind the protests, united by a shared sense of frustration with political elites who seem disconnected from the struggles of real life. This cross-class alliance is powerful because it breaks the usual political mould, making the protests not just a rural issue, but a national movement. The imagery of tractors rolling into city streets and peaceful farmers facing off against police forces has captured the public imagination, fueling a growing wave of sympathy and outrage. At the centre of this storm is Nigel Farage, whose political comeback is being hailed as one of the most dramatic in recent British history. Farage's willingness to confront Starmer head-on, to stand with the farmers and challenge the government's narrative, has re-energised his supporters and attracted new ones. His message is simple but effective. Labour's policies threaten the freedoms and livelihoods of ordinary people, and only a fearless opposition can stop them. Farage's speeches, interviews, and social media presence have become a rallying cry for those disillusioned with mainstream politics. By positioning himself as the defender of traditional British values and property rights, he has injected new life into the political debate. Meanwhile, the legal and judicial dimensions of the crisis deepen. The anonymous judge who warned about Labour's crackdown has sparked a wider debate about the rule of law, civil liberties, and government overreach. Legal experts, civil rights groups, and opposition politicians are increasingly vocal about the dangers of using police powers to suppress peaceful protest. This legal scrutiny threatens to halt or even reverse Labour's aggressive approach, creating a potential constitutional crisis. The government is caught between pushing forward with its agenda and respecting fundamental democratic rights, a tension that may prove impossible to resolve without significant political cost. The economic impact of the ongoing unrest is also beginning to show. Disruptions caused by protests, blocked roads, and uncertainty about future agricultural policies are worrying investors, farmers, and businesses alike. Concerns over food supply chains, rising costs, and rural economic decline are mounting. Some economists warn that if Labour does not pivot quickly, the economic fallout could deepen the political crisis and alienate even more voters. The pressure on Starmer to find a solution that balances environmental goals with economic realities is intense, but so far the government has shown little flexibility. International observers are watching closely too. Britain's image as a stable democracy is at risk. with media coverage highlighting the political turmoil and questioning the government's approach to dissent. Allies in Europe and beyond are concerned about the potential for unrest to escalate, as well as the implications for the UK's economic and diplomatic standing. This international dimension adds another layer of urgency to the crisis, as Starmer faces not only domestic opposition but global scrutiny. The path ahead for Starmer is fraught with peril. His government must decide whether to double down on its current course or seek compromise with protesters and political opponents. The longer the standoff continues, the greater the risk of further escalation, political defections, and loss of public support. Farage's role as the opposition's spearhead has injected new energy and determination into the protest movement, making it clear that this is more than a temporary disruption. It is a fundamental challenge to Labour's vision for Britain. As this high-stakes drama unfolds, the nation waits anxiously. Will Starmer find a way to defuse the crisis, or will his government be brought to its knees by the growing revolt? The answer will shape Britain's political future and determine whether the voices of ordinary people can still influence those in power, or whether they will be silenced by force and fear. This moment is not just about politics, it is about the very soul of the country and who gets to decide its future. This crisis is far from over, and the decisions made in the coming days will ripple across Britain's political landscape for years to come. The battle between Starmer's government and the growing movement, led by Nigel Farage and the farmers, is a fight for the future of freedom, property rights, and democracy itself. If you believe in standing up against heavy-handed government overreach, if you support the rights of everyday people to defend their land and livelihoods, then this is your moment to pay attention and take action. Share this video to spread the truth about what's really happening. Speak out in your communities, and demand that your representatives listen to the voices of those who feed the nation, not the elites trying to silence them. Remember, when peaceful protests are crushed and voices are silenced, it's not just farmers who lose, it's every citizen who values liberty and justice. Stay informed, stay engaged, and don't let this moment slip away. Subscribe to the Britain Info channel for the latest updates, and join us as we keep exposing the truth behind the headlines. Together, we can stand strong against the forces that threaten to reshape our country in ways that serve only the powerful few. The fight is just beginning, and your voice matters now more than ever.